The G20 summit has been shadowed by the conflict in Syria, with the leaders of the G20 still divided on issue. At the working dinner of G20 leaders here on the first day, Syria was the topic of discussion, but the divide over the course of action remained, with all global powers sticking to their stand. While US is trying to garner support for strike and host Russia is opposing it, India believes that the world community should wait for the report of the UN inspectors on the alleged use of chemical weapons in Syria.
One, that we condemn the use of chemical weapons, whether in Syria or anywhere. We do condemn them. That's point number one. Second, that we need to be certain of the facts, particularly keeping in mind past experience. We should be certain what has happened, even if probabilities point in a certain direction. And I took that to mean that we need to wait to see what the UN inspectors come up with. Hopefully they will come up relatively soon. Prime Minister also said that whatever action is taken should be under UN auspices and not outside the UN framework. And he also said that we are not in favor of action that is aimed, armed action that is aimed at regime change.
Meanwhile, Syrian ambassador to India Raed Kamal Abbas lauded Indian Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh's statement at the G20 meeting in Russia on possible strike by the US on his country.
This announcement from the Prime Minister of India we highly appreciate, and we thank him, and through him we thank all Indian government and people of India, and we pray for God to bless India and its people. Also we highly appreciate the position of India since the beginning of the issue in Syria.
In the second working session of the G20 on Friday, the Prime Minister highlighted the need for easier mobility of skilled labour across countries. He reiterated the need for investment in the infrastructure sector and suggested that the World Bank and the ADB should focus on the same by the creation of a special window. He emphasized that growth and job creation should be the central message of this summit and highlighted the reforms that India has undertaken for inclusive development as well as to boost investor climate in the country.
I think the Prime Minister's speech actually very carefully worded, and I don't think he was attacking the developing countries, but he was kind of zeroing in on what is a complex problem, recognizing that there are a lot of technical difficulties, and trying to create a consensus that, look, let's see how we can move forward. Now, the key thing here is reserve currency. India's monetary policy is not going to have any impact on anybody other than India. So I don't think others want, I'm sure they'd be happy if Dr. Raghuram Rajan tells them in advance what he's going to do. But it's not something, we're not a systemically important country from a monetary policy point of view.
The Prime Minister also asked the G20 leaders to send a signal to maintain the flow of infrastructure financing. The Prime Minister also met leaders of other countries on the sidelines of the summit to take relations forward.
Day 2 of the G20 summit was important for India in respect of the bilaterals that were held between Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh and leaders of Argentina as well as Japan. In the joint statement that came out with Japan, the currency swap arrangement has been increased from $15 billion to $50 billion in the hopes of providing stability to the currency markets. But the big thing that came out of the G20 summit was this G20 leaders' declaration, which is on expected lines and talks about growth through job creation. With Jayashree Puri, this is Priyanka Agarwal Chaudhary for DD News, St. Petersburg.